In this video, we will be tasting and talking about competition grade Guan Yin Oolong Tea. Here we are with batch 68 of the ecochateas Tea Club, a competition grade Guan Yin Oolong Tea from Muzha in Taipei area. It is our regular source of Guan Yin that we sourced this batch from. And the way it worked out or unfolded, so to speak, this year was that the Muzha Farmers Association that produces the Guan Yin Oolong Tea competition delayed their competition until almost the end of June, so about 6 weeks or so. And when we asked for the available batches of spring tea to taste, he included a batch of tea that he prepared for the competition. It turns out that at that time he wasn't sure, or no one was sure, if the competition was going to happen or not. So he was willing to part with some of his competition tea without knowing if he would be able to enter it into competition. Turns out he did. The competition happened, he entered several batches of tea, and this batch was entered and achieved third place category prize, which I believe is about the top 18% of overall entries. He also won Toudang Jiang with another batch of tea. Toudang is within the top 2%. He got 2 batches of second place category, which are about the top 8%. So he's doing really well. He seems to be much more into the competitions in recent years, preparing more batches of tea for them. It does help. I mean, his tea, the value of it goes up significantly, sometimes manifold, especially if you win the top 2% prize. And he did achieve first place award, I think 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. And then you're making big bucks. So anyway, it was nice to be able to taste a batch that he felt was worthy of competition, and then be able to source it and share it with the tea club, not only for its quality, but also to represent the standard, the quality standard for the local Guan Yin Oolong competition. He said it was a bit tricky this year because with roasted teas, in particular the ones that we are most familiar with, is this competition, and even more so the Dongding Oolong Tea competition in Lugu. The tea makers have to time it with their roasting and plan. For example, they might roast it 1 week before and let the roast factor rest and settle, or they might roast it 2 or 3 days before and try to hit the mark more closely. But basically what they're trying to do is to get their roast factor to a level that will be slightly above what the standard is, so that it has room to drop down in its degree or roasted flavor, basically, in the end. And that's a gamble. You don't really know what's going to happen with any given batch of tea and how much that roast factor is going to change with time and how much time. So he prepared his batches of tea for the normal scheduled event. That didn't happen. He had to go ahead and re-roast them, kind of touch them up before the competition. So it was sort of this going with the flow and trying to hit the mark when he had already done so in his own mind. And that's the story of this year's competition. We just found out that there was indeed a competition. The results were announced a couple of weeks ago. So we sourced this tea knowing that it was competition grade, and then found out that it did indeed win the third place category prize. Okay, so basically the difference between the tea that we normally source from him and competition grade is how pretty it looks in its appearance, and possibly the roast factor. We like to get batches that are more heavily roasted because we feel that that's just more characteristic of a traditionally made Guan Yin here in Taiwan. And then to allow that roast factor to settle over time, like 6 months or a year. We're actually finally timing our batches, seasonal batches of tea, so that we can offer them many months after they're made, because we think they actually reach their peak between 6 months and a year after the final processing. So this tea will only get better with age. You can leave it in its bag just with a rubber band on it or a bag clip. So we recommend to hold on to some of it and see how it changes over time. Our sources tea from the Pinglin area, and that tea is mostly machine harvested. He also has his own crops of Tia Guan Yin, and he mixes together Tia Guan Yin tea strain. Tia Guan Yin is also the name of a cultivar from Anxi province in mainland China that has been cultivated here in Taiwan for probably a couple of hundred years by now. He mixes together Tia Guan Yin that he grows himself, also sources from other farmers, with Jinshen, the Tai Cha number 12 strain. A lot of the competition tea in recent years is made from Jinshen leaves because there's just not enough Tia Guan Yin raw material to make it from. So he's found a happy medium. He basically does a 50-50 blend of Tia Guan Yin and Jinshen to reach what he feels is a good quality. When we brewed it, I brewed 7 grams of tea leaves in a 150 milliliter tea judging cup for 2 minutes first, and then for a little over 2 minutes, 2 minutes 30 seconds or so for the second brew. The aroma coming off the leaves when they were hot was just scrumptious. It was like cocoa and definitely a roasted quality, obvious roasted quality, very smooth and soothing, and also the aroma coming off the spoon when we stirred the tea after it was brewed. I'm going to go ahead and taste first brew here. Wow. I wow because it's much fruitier and tangier than when I've brewed it in a teapot. So this brewing method really brought out the unique characteristic of Tia Guan Yin, which is its tang factor combined with a significant roast factor. The tanginess comes from a specific step in the processing of the tea leaves, where they wrap the tea leaves in a cloth ball and heat them. There's actually a machine that he uses now. He used to do it with a basket roaster or put them in his electric oven and put it at low temperature. We were surprised. We asked again with this batch what the temperature is at that particular stage of the processing, and he said about 90 degrees Celsius, between 90 and 100, which was significantly higher than what we thought. We thought it was like 70. So he brings it up to that temperature while the leaves still have moisture content in them. It's actually at the beginning or in the middle of the rolling and drying process. So he starts rolling the leaves, and at some point he just heats them and gets them to be almost steamed in their own juices, so to speak, while they're tightly wrapped in these cloths into a ball. So that's where Tia Guan Yin gets its unique quality. After that, it's rolled and dried, and then there's an extensive roasting process for over 30 hours, can be up to 50 hours of roasting, usually 4 times. Pretty close to the first brew. Maybe even more complex. Amazing tanginess. See, the roast factor has gone down. This bag has been open for at least a week, maybe more. And that alone, just opening the bag and letting it sit for a few days even, particularly it's been quite humid here in Taiwan, will change the character. And what was very roasted quality, it still has a lot of roast in it, but there's just so much more complexity now. It's not quite citrus. It's almost like raspberry. It's got sweetness in there. It's tart. Rhubarb is another thing that comes to mind. Very interesting. It's so bold and complex in its character. It's really becoming one of our overall favorite teas, Tea Guan Yin. We like these traditionally made, more heavily oxidized and roasted, like Dongding. I mean, Dongding is where our tea journey began 30 years ago. So we're a little bit partial by default, but there is a reason that it's remained up in our top 3 if we had to choose what types of tea. Anyway, it's one of our favorite teas as well. And we're just getting more and more into Tea Guan Yin in recent years, because there's a lot of work and finesse that goes into processing these leaves. That's the thing. It's like making a mole or a curry properly. There's so many steps and there's so many factors of adjustment that can be made. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it. Much respect and gratitude to these tea makers. Fruity and tangy is the first kind of unconscious hit that I get, and then there's roast. That's the second thing that comes to mind. Roasted yams, it's that sweet quality that's combined with the roast makes it something like a fire roasted yam. So there we have it. Competition grade and, as we now know, award-winning tea from the Spring 2021 Muzha Tea Guan Yin tea competition from the Farmers Association there. We feel very, very happy with our source, who has become our friend over the years. He's really coming into his own. He's kind of peaking in his career, or perhaps, he's continuing to climb that hill at least. Can't get enough of this. If you like roasty and you like tangy, this is the tea for you. Please let us know what you think by leaving your comments here under the video or on our blog posts. We really like to hear your experience of this tea. We'll see you next month.